Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The air in the penthouse was thick with unsaid things, a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to swallow all sound. It was the quiet before the cataclysm, a deceptive calm that had settled over Willow Tate's life for what felt like an eternity, but was, in reality, only a few fragile weeks. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her hands resting on the cool glass, staring out at the Port Charles skyline without truly seeing it. Below, the city pulsed with its usual, indifferent rhythm, a stark contrast to the static, suffocating dread that had taken root in her chest. The source of that dread was currently in the study, the soft, rhythmic tap-tap-tapping of his keyboard, a maddening counterpoint to the frantic beat of her own heart. Drew Kane. Her fiancé. The man she had built a life with, a future with, on a foundation she had believed was unshakable. They had faced down corporate takeovers, personal betrayals, and the specter of his missing years, his fractured memories. Through it all, Willow had been his anchor, her love a steady, unwavering lighthouse in the storm of his existence. She had believed in their partnership, in their shared truth. But the foundation was cracking. It had been for days, ever since the name Nina Reeves began to slither its way back into their lives with renewed, venomous purpose. Nina, her biological mother, a fact that still felt like a poorly fitting garment, itchy and wrong. Nina, who was now locked in a bitter custody battle with Willow and Michael Corinthos for Wiley, a battle that was about to explode in a courtroom in a matter of days. The trial loomed over them, a dark, gathering cloud, and Drew's name was on the witness list. He was supposed to be their star character witness, the respected, morally upright CEO who would vouch for Michael's stability and their family's integrity against Nina's claims. Yet, something was off. Drew had become distant, his gaze evasive. He would take calls in hushed tones, falling silent when she entered the room. He had started arguing for a settlement, for finding a way to make peace with Nina, his reasoning feeling flimsy, out of character for the man who championed justice and facing consequences. A cold, sickening suspicion had begun to crystallize in Willow's gut, a fear so profound she dared not give it voice. The breaking point came in the form of a phone call she wasn't supposed to hear. She had been coming down the hall, a cup of tea in her hand for him, when the low murmur of his voice stopped her just outside the study door. "Carly," he had said, his voice strained. I know what's at stake. But she's my mother, and I have to consider what this silence has cost me already." The word hit Willow like a physical blow. Mother. Drew's mother was dead. He had no mother. Unless. The teacup rattled in its saucer, a sharp, discordant sound. She pushed the door open, her movements stiff. Drew looked up, his face a mask of guilty surprise. He ended the call quickly. "Willow. I didn't hear you come in." "Who was that?" she asked, her voice deceptively calm. "Just business. Corinthos Global. Nothing for you to worry about." He offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You said mother," Willow stated, the words dropping like stones into the quiet room. "You told Carly you had to consider your mother." Drew's face went pale. He stood up, coming around the desk, his hands held out in a placating gesture. "Willow, you misheard. It's the stress of the trial, all the pressure. You're exhausted." "Don't," she whispered, the first spark of anger igniting in her chest. "Don't you dare tell me what I am. Don't you dare patronize me. I heard you, Drew. Clear as day. Who is your mother?" The silence that stretched between them was different now. It was no longer just heavy, it was charged, electric with the imminent revelation of a truth so monumental it threatened to shatter everything. Drew's shoulders slumped. The fight, the evasion, seemed to drain out of him, leaving behind a man hollowed out by a secret too big to carry. "Willow," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "Please, you have to understand. The position I was in. It was an impossible choice." "What choice?" she demanded, her voice rising. "What are you talking about? Who is your mother, Drew?" He looked at her, his eyes filled with a torment so deep it was almost tangible. And then he said it. The name. The one name that was a key turning in the lock of her own personal hell. Nina, he breathed, the single syllable hanging in the air between them, vile and incomprehensible. Nina Reeves is my biological mother. For a moment, the world stopped. The hum of the city outside vanished. The very air seemed to still. Willow stared at him, her mind frantically trying to process the words, to rearrange the universe into a shape where such a sentence could make sense. It was impossible. It was a lie. A cruel, twisted joke. What? The word was a choked gasp. It's true, Drew said, his voice gaining a desperate, confessional momentum now that the dam had broken. When I was in prison, after my memories started to return, fragments came back. A face. A feeling. When I got out, I hired a private investigator. We did a DNA test. It's conclusive, Willow. Nina Reeves gave me up for adoption when I was a baby. She is my mother. The pieces, the awful, jagged pieces of the last few weeks, began to slam into place with a force that stole the breath from her lungs. His sudden, inexplicable sympathy for Nina. His arguments for settling the custody case. The hushed phone calls. The distance. He hadn't been stressed about the trial, he had been torn apart by his own devastating allegiance. How long? Willow's voice was a razor's edge, low and dangerous. How long have you known? Drew flinched. He looked down at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. A few months, he admitted, the words barely audible. Months? The scream was torn from her, raw and guttural. You've known for months? While I have been here, by your side, supporting you, loving you, planning a future with you, you have known that the woman who is trying to destroy my family, to take my son, is your mother? It wasn't that simple, he pleaded, stepping toward her, but she recoiled as if he were a venomous snake. I was trying to protect you. You were so fragile after your illness, and then the custody battle started. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could handle it, that I could find a way to reason with her, to make her back down without anyone ever having to know. Protect me? Willow let out a laugh that was sharp and brittle, on the verge of shattering. You call this protection? Lying to me every single day? Letting me stand up in front of judges and lawyers and declare that Nina Reeves is an unfit, manipulative monster, while you, my partner, knew you were her son? You let me vilify your own mother, Drew. And you said nothing. What was I supposed to do? He cried out, his own frustration and guilt boiling over. Destroy our relationship? Destroy you? The truth would have shattered you, Willow. It's shattering you now. You don't get to decide what shatters me, she fired back, her body trembling with a rage so pure and hot it felt like a fever. You don't get to make that choice for me. You took my agency, Drew. You took my right to the truth. You let me build a life on a lie. She advanced on him, her small frame seeming to grow, fueled by a righteous, burning fury. All those conversations we had about Nina. All those nights we lay in bed and I told you how much I feared her, how much I resented her for everything she's done, to me, to Michael, to Wiley. And you held me. You comforted me. You agreed with me. And the whole time, you were her son. You were lying to my face. Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and furious, but she made no move to wipe them away. You were going to stand up in that courtroom, weren't you? You were going to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you were going to sit in that witness box and testify against your own mother, condemning her, all while pretending you were just a neutral, concerned party. Or were you planning to sabotage us, Drew? Were you going to give some half-hearted testimony, to help her case? No! Never, he insisted, his face a mask of anguish. I would never do that to you or Michael. To Wiley. I was going to tell the truth about her actions. My relationship to her doesn't change the facts of what she's done. It changes everything. Willow screamed. "Don't you see that? It makes you a liar. It makes your testimony worthless. It makes our entire life together a fraud. You chose her. By keeping this secret, by protecting her from the consequences of this truth, you chose her over me. Over our family. I chose you," he roared, finally losing his composure. "I chose you every single day by keeping this from you. I was trying to hold our world together. You weren't holding it together, you were building it on quicksand." She was directly in front of him now, her chest heaving, her vision blurred by tears and rage. "You let me believe we were a team. You let me believe we were facing this together. But we weren't. You were on the other side. You have been this whole time." The magnitude of his betrayal unfolded before her in all its horrific detail. It wasn't just the lie itself, it was the thousand smaller deceptions that propped it up. It was the intimacy they had shared that was now tainted, poisoned by the knowledge that his mind was elsewhere, wrestling with a loyalty that did not include her. It was the future they had planned, the wedding, the life, the promise of a family built on trust and honesty, that now lay in ruins, exposed as a beautiful, elaborate fiction. She thought of his hands on her skin, his words of love whispered in the dark, all while this secret festered inside him. She thought of the strength she had drawn from him, strength that was now revealed to be hollow, based on a fundamental falsehood. He had made a fool of her. He had allowed her to love a version of him that did not exist, a man unencumbered by the most profound and conflicting tie imaginable. And in that moment, looking at his tormented face, all she could see was the living, breathing embodiment of her deepest pain. He was the reason her world was crumbling. He was the architect of this devastation. The love she had felt for him curdled, transforming in an instant into something else, something dark and vengeful and utterly desolate. Her hand moved before her mind could even register the command. It was not a thought-out action, not a calculated decision. It was a primal, instinctual response to a wound so deep, so personal, that words were no longer adequate. It was the physical manifestation of a heart breaking, of trust evaporating, of a future dissolving into dust. The crack of her palm against his cheek was shockingly loud in the quiet penthouse. It was not a gentle slap, not a symbolic gesture. It was a full-force, open-handed blow that snapped his head to the side and left the stark, red imprint of her hand on his skin. The force of it reverberated up her arm, a stinging, painful confirmation of the violence of the act. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. They both stood frozen, the echo of the slap hanging in the air between them, a brutal full stop to their life together. Drew slowly brought a hand to his cheek, his eyes wide with shock and a dawning, profound horror. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, he seemed to see the absolute and total destruction he had wrought. He saw not just anger in her eyes, but a desolation so complete it was like looking into a void. Willow's hand fell back to her side, trembling. The physical act had drained the immediate, blinding fury from her, leaving behind a cold, vast emptiness. The rage was gone, replaced by a grief so heavy it felt as though it would crush her. She took a step back, her breath catching in a ragged sob. She looked at the man she was supposed to marry, the man she had trusted with her life, her heart, her child's future, and she saw a stranger. "Get out," she whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. "Willow, please," he begged, his own eyes filling with tears. "Get out," she screamed, the sound raw and torn from the depths of her soul. "I don't want to look at you. I don't ever want to see you again. Get out of this house. Get out of my life." He stood there for a moment longer, a statue of regret and shame, before the reality of her words seemed to truly penetrate. The love of his life, the woman he had sworn to protect, was ordering him away with a hatred in her eyes that he had put there. He had done this. With his secret, with his lie, he had burned their paradise to the ground. Without another word, his shoulders slumped in ultimate defeat, Drew Kane turned and walked out of the study. She heard his footsteps cross the living room, heard the soft click of the front door opening and then closing with a finality that echoed through the vast, empty space. And then, she was alone. The silence rushed back in, but it was different now. It was no longer the quiet of anticipation, but the silence of aftermath. The silence of a bomb site. Willow's legs gave way beneath her. She crumpled to the floor, the expensive Persian rug doing little to cushion her fall. The sobs came then, great, racking heaves that shook her entire body. They were not gentle tears of sadness, but violent, convulsive waves of agony. She cried for the love she had lost, for the trust that was shattered, for the future that had been stolen. She cried for the sheer, monstrous unfairness of it all. She had survived a deadly illness, she had fought for her family, she had built a life with a man she believed was her soulmate, only to have it all torn away by the one person she had believed would never hurt her. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen shut. She cried until there were no tears left, until she was just a hollow shell, rocking back and forth on the floor, the cold from the marble seeping through the rug and into her bones. The world outside the window continued to turn, the lights of Port Charles twinkling with a cruel, indifferent cheer. The trial was still coming. The fight for her son was still looming. But the ground beneath her feet was gone. Her partner was gone. The certainty of her life was gone. Drew's secret, his devastating truth, was not just a personal betrayal. It was a tactical nuclear weapon dropped directly onto the heart of their custody case. How could they possibly stand in a court of law now? How could Michael stand beside a man who was, by blood, the grandson of the woman they were fighting? How could Drew's testimony hold any weight when it would be revealed that he had a massive, prejudicial conflict of interest that he had deliberately concealed? Nina, if she knew, would eviscerate them. The judge would see their entire household as a nest of lies and hidden agendas. Willow had thought her battle was with Nina Reeves. She now realized her greatest enemy had been sharing her bed, sharing her life, holding her in his arms. The shocking truth was not just that Nina was Drew's mother. The shocking truth was that the man she loved had become the single greatest threat to everything she held dear. As she lay on the floor in the devastating quiet of the penthouse, the ghost of the slap still tingling on her palm, Willow Tate understood that the trial had already begun. The first verdict had been rendered here, in this room, in the space between her hand and his face. And the sentence was a life of unimaginable pain, a future forever altered, and a love that was not just broken, but annihilated. The real courtroom was just a formality now. The true judgment had already taken place. Willow stood in the quiet hallway outside the Quartermain mansion, her hands trembling as she clutched the envelope Michael had begged her not to open until he got home. But she couldn't wait. She had already sensed something was wrong, something big. The silence in the house felt heavy, like walls holding secrets. When she tore the envelope and began reading the documents tucked inside, her breath caught. Her heart hammered in her chest. No, no, this can't be right, she whispered to herself, the pages shaking in her hands. She took a step back, tears filling her eyes as she stared harder at the words. They were simple, blunt, and devastating. Drew Kane had known the truth, had known for weeks, and said nothing. A truth that could change everything about the trial, about her safety, about Michael's future. Willow felt something collapse inside her, like a fragile structure hit by a sudden storm. She swallowed hard, confusion and anger blending in her chest until she couldn't breathe. The sound of footsteps made her head snap up. Drew walked into the foyer, his expression tight but relieved to see her. Willow, hey. I was actually coming to find you. We need to talk before everything happens at the courthouse. Willow stiffened. Her voice came out low. Yes. We do. Drew paused, sensing the shift immediately. Are you okay? Willow's fingers clenched around the documents. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Her voice cracked, but it was steady enough to make Drew's eyes narrow in confusion. What are you talking about? She stepped closer, holding the papers up between them. This information. You sat on this, intentionally. You let me worry, let me fight, let me stress about this trial while you were hiding the truth. Drew exhaled. Willow, where did you get that? It doesn't matter, she snapped. Is it true? Drew rubbed his forehead, frustration building. I was trying to protect everyone until I knew what to do. It's complicated, Willow. Complicated? Her voice rose sharply. You lied to me. Drew opened his mouth, but Willow's hand flew before he could get another word out. The slap echoed through the foyer like a gunshot. His head snapped to the side, shock locking his entire body still. Willow's palm stung, but the burst of emotion didn't ease. If anything, it made the pressure in her chest tighten. Drew lifted his gaze slowly, eyes full of hurt and realization. "Willow," he whispered. "You had no right," she said, her voice trembling, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You had no right to decide what I should know or when I should know it. Do you have any idea what this means? What the consequences could be?" Drew stepped back, absorbing her pain like a punch. "I didn't want to drag you into something that could put you at risk." "You already did," Willow cried. "By lying. By manipulating what I knew. I trusted you. Michael trusted you. You're supposed to be family." He winced at that. "I'm still trying to protect this family." Willow shook her head. "Protecting? This isn't protecting. This is betrayal." Drew moved toward her gently. "Willow, listen to me." "No," she said, backing away. "You listen. You don't get to decide for me. You don't get to make choices that impact my children, my home, my life, and then expect me to stay quiet." Drew softened. "I wasn't asking for you to stay quiet." "You didn't have to ask," she said. "You just kept me in the dark." He tried again. "Let me explain." "No," she said sharply. "No more excuses. I want the truth. I want all of it." Drew inhaled slowly, shoulders deflating. "Fine. But not here. And not like this. Let's sit down." Willow's laugh was hollow. "You think I can sit? After this?" She pressed her hands against her temples. "Just tell me why. Why would you hide something so important?" Drew's face tightened with guilt. "Because I didn't want Michael to blow up everything before we had a clear strategy. He reacts on instinct, and sometimes that makes things worse." She blinked. "So you hid the truth from me because you were afraid Michael might make a bad move?" "I was afraid he'd make a rash move that put him in danger," Drew countered. "And you know he would." Willow shook her head. "No. You made a choice based on fear. And now everything is worse." Drew's jaw tensed. "I was trying to fix this without dragging anyone else into the mess. But you dragged us anyway." Willow's voice cracked. "By keeping secrets. Drew, this trial affects all of us. Michael could lose everything. And you're sitting on a piece of information that could change the narrative in court." Drew held her gaze. "I was waiting for the right moment." Willow stepped closer. "Then tell me, Drew, when exactly was the right moment? When Michael was already behind bars? When the judge handed down a sentence? When everything fell apart and we were left scrambling?" His silence answered for him. Willow let out a shaky breath. "I can't believe you did this." "Willow," Drew said softly. "I'm sorry." She shook her head again, more slowly this time. "Sorry doesn't undo what you did. And it doesn't make the trial any easier." Drew reached toward her, but she stepped away. "Please don't." He froze. Willow wiped her tears, swallowing the knot in her throat. "Do you know what it's been like? Watching Michael worry? Watching our kids feel the tension in the house? I've barely been able to sleep. And all this time, you were holding on to something that could have given us hope." "I thought I was doing the right thing," Drew whispered. "You weren't," she said, voice firm. "You made the wrong choice." The front door swung open and Michael walked in, closing it behind him. When he saw the tension in the room, his body stiffened. "What's going on?" he asked, eyes shifting between them. Willow looked at him, then back at Drew. "Tell him," she said. Drew swallowed hard. "Willow." Tell him, she repeated, sharper this time. Michael stepped closer. Tell me what? Drew took a breath. There's something I found out. Something I didn't tell you yet. About the case. Michael's entire expression froze, and Willow watched the frustration rise in him like a tide. You kept something from me? He asked quietly. Drew nodded once. Michael clenched his jaw. How long have you known? A few weeks. Are you kidding me? Michael barked. Weeks? Drew, what the hell were you thinking? Willow stepped between them. Michael, I know you're angry. Aren't you? He snapped. Willow met his gaze. I am. But yelling isn't going to fix this. Michael let out a bitter laugh. No, but it might make me feel better. Drew held up the papers Willow had handed him. Michael, this changes the trajectory of the trial. But only if we use it the right way. If we move too fast, the whole plan can backfire. That's why I waited. Michael snatched the documents, scanning them with growing shock. You should have told me. I know, Drew said quietly. No, Michael said. You don't know. Because if you knew, you wouldn't have kept it to yourself while my entire life is on the line. Willow placed a hand on Michael's arm. Michael, breathe. He exhaled shakily. Drew took a step forward. Look. I messed up. I should have been honest from the beginning. But I'm telling you now because it's time to use it. Michael stared at him. You waited until the morning of the trial? It's better late than never, Drew said. Michael shook his head. Not when my future hangs in the balance. Willow tightened her grip on his arm. We need to think clearly. No one else is going to do it for us. Drew nodded. She's right. Look, I'm prepared to tell the judge everything. To explain why I waited. To take whatever consequences come my way. Michael stared at him. You think that's going to fix it? No, Drew admitted. But it might help. Willow moved to stand between them. This isn't the time for fighting. We need a plan. Michael gave her a long look. You're calmer than I expected. She exhaled. I already lost it. I already slapped him. Her voice cracked slightly. But now we have to think about you. Michael's face softened for a moment. Are you okay? No, she whispered honestly. But I'm here. And that's what matters. He pulled her into a brief embrace, rubbing her back gently before turning to Drew. All right. Tell me everything. No more secrets. Drew nodded. You'll get it all. I promise. They moved into the living room, tension following like shadows. Willow sat close to Michael, her hand gripping his as Drew explained the entire chain of events, what he'd learned, how he found out, who was involved, and how the truth could shift the entire case in court. Willow watched Michael's reactions, every moment of realization etched in the tightening of his jaw and the narrowing of his eyes. When Drew finished, Michael leaned back. This is huge. I know, Drew said. And you sat on it. I know, Drew repeated, closing his eyes for a second. Willow rubbed Michael's hand. So what do we do now? Michael looked at her, then at Drew. We take this to the judge. Immediately. Drew nodded. That was my plan. Michael rose from the couch. Fine. Let's go. Willow stood too. I'm coming with you. Michael hesitated. Willow, you don't have to. Yes, she said softly. I do. Drew watched them quietly. I'll meet you both outside. Once he was gone, Michael turned to Willow. I'm sorry you had to deal with this alone. Willow brushed her fingers along his cheek. I'm not alone. Michael kissed her forehead softly. "We're going to get through this." She nodded, squeezing his hand. "Yes. We are." As they walked toward the door, Willow took a deep breath. The slap, the anger, the betrayal, it still burned. But for now, there was something bigger at stake. The truth was finally out. The trial awaited. And Willow would face it with Michael, no matter what it brought next. They stepped outside into the cool morning air, heading toward a future none of them could fully predict, but one they were determined to fight for, with honesty, with resolve, and with every painful truth finally laid bare.